My parents disowned me on a Tuesday, not with tears, not with heartbreak, not even with the kind of dramatic shouting people imagine when families fall apart. No, my parents did it the polished way, the respectable way, the kind of cruelty that still folds napkins neatly and worries about what the neighbors might hear. I was 19, 6 weeks pregnant, and sitting at our kitchen table with both hands wrapped around a mug of tea. I was too nauseous to drink. Your one click can keep these stories alive. Subscribe, because every voice deserves to be heard. Don't miss out on the journey. Subscribe, and let's grow, laugh, and learn together. My mother had already gone pale. My father had already gone cold. And the worst part, it wasn't even the pregnancy. Not really. It was who I was pregnant by. Eli, my boyfriend of almost 2 years. The man my parents referred to as that electrician, even after I'd told them his name at least 50 times. As if a trade somehow made him less human, less worthy, less clean. My father sat across from me in complete silence for almost a full minute before finally speaking. Tell me this is a joke. I swallowed hard. It's not. My mother pressed her fingers to her forehead. Oh my God. I had rehearsed that conversation 100 times in my head. Thought maybe if I said it gently enough, responsibly enough, they would still be angry, sure, but eventually practical. Maybe disappointed, but still parents. Instead, my father looked at me the way people look at flood damage. Not with grief, with inconvenience. How long have you been sleeping with him? He asked. I felt my face burn. Dad. No, he snapped. You don't get to be embarrassed now. My mother finally looked up. Were you trying to ruin your life? That line hit me so hard I almost laughed. Because ruin in my family had always had a very specific definition. Anything that made them lose social altitude. I had grown up in a house where image was oxygen. My father was a partner at a regional accounting firm. My mother chaired charity luncheons and spoke in that soft, expensive voice women develop when they've spent years pretending judgment is elegance. My older brother was in med school. My younger sister was already being described as ivy-bound. And me, I was the one who had potential until I used it in a direction they didn't approve of. I had been accepted into community college nursing prerequisites and working part-time at a pediatric clinic. I wasn't reckless. I wasn't lazy. I was just in love with someone who wore work boots instead of loafers. Eli was 22, licensed, steady, and already earning more than half the men my mother called promising. But in my parents' world, his paycheck mattered less than the fact that he installed wiring instead of giving TED Talks about market disruption. My father leaned back in his chair. So what's the plan? He asked. The tone alone told me this was not a real question. Still, I answered honestly. We're keeping the baby. My mother actually gasped. My father laughed once, sharp and humorless. Of course you are. I stared at him. What does that mean? It means, he said, that you've decided to throw away every opportunity we gave you for a boy who climbs ladders for a living. That was when something in me snapped. Eli works harder in a week than most of the men you respect work in a month. Silence. Then my father stood, slowly, dangerously calm. Do not, he said, lecture me about respect while sitting in my house pregnant at 19. My mother started crying then, not because I was scared, not because I was pregnant, because, as she said through tears, what am I supposed to tell people? That was her first instinct, her first grief, the story she'd have to manage. I looked at her and realized with horrifying clarity that there was no version of this where I stayed their daughter and became a mother. In their eyes, those identities had just canceled each other out. My father walked to the counter, opened a drawer, pulled out my spare house key, and dropped it on the table in front of me. "You want to be grown?" he said. "Go be grown." I stared at the key, then at him. At first, I genuinely didn't understand. "What? You heard me." My voice came out smaller than I wanted. "You're kicking me out?" My mother didn't even say no. She just cried harder. My father crossed his arms. "You made an adult decision. Adult decisions come with adult consequences." That sentence would have sounded more convincing if he hadn't paid my brother's rent through all 4 years of college. But fairness had never been a family value in my house. Only hierarchy. And I had just dropped to the bottom of it permanently. I stood up so fast my chair scraped hard against the floor. "You can't be serious." "I am completely serious." I looked at my mother one last time. She still wouldn't meet my eyes. That hurt more than my father, if I'm honest, because rage is easier to survive than abandonment wrapped in silence. I went upstairs, packed 2 duffel bags, and called Eli from my bedroom floor, while trying not to throw up from stress and morning sickness at the same time. When he answered, I said only 4 words before my voice broke. "They kicked me out." He was at the house in 18 minutes. I know because I watched every second from the front window like a person waiting for rescue from a flood. He didn't storm in, didn't yell, didn't try to prove himself. He just walked to the porch, took my bags from my hands, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "You're not doing this alone." My father watched from the hallway like he was witnessing a cautionary tale come to life. My mother stayed in the kitchen, wouldn't even come say goodbye. I wish I could tell you I left with dignity, that I made some elegant speech about love and class and what real family means. I didn't. I got into Eli's truck shaking so hard I couldn't buckle my seatbelt for 20 seconds. Then I cried all the way to his apartment, and for the next 19 years, my parents never once came looking for me. Not when I got married, not when my son was born, not when Eli built his electrical company from 1 van and a borrowed toolbox into one of the most respected commercial contracting businesses in the county, not when we bought our first home, not when we bought our second, not when life proved over and over again that being loved well by the wrong kind of man was still infinitely better than being judged forever by the right kind of family. 19 years. No holidays. No birthday cards. No, just checking in. Nothing. Until one rainy Thursday evening, when my mother knocked on my front door. When I opened the door, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked smaller, older, like life had finally introduced itself without makeup. And the first thing she said wasn't, "I'm sorry." It was, "Your father lost everything." Of course. Not "I missed you." Not "I've thought about you every day." Just crisis. Need. Timing. Apparently 19 years of silence had an expiration date the moment money got involved. I let her sit in my kitchen anyway, out of curiosity, not forgiveness. She told me Dad had made bad investments. My brother had moved across the country and couldn't help. My sister was dealing with her own family. Then she looked around my house, the one built by the life they mocked, and whispered, "We didn't know you'd do this well." That sentence landed harder than an apology would have, because there it was, the truth. They hadn't stayed away because I was dead to them. They stayed away because they were waiting for me to fail. And when I didn't, they had no script left. So I stood up, walked to the door, and said calmly, "The electrician you threw me away for built every good thing in this house." She cried when I said that. I didn't, because some grief expires long before the people who caused it come back asking to be let in.